The Mystara project is proud to present Part 18 of the Lore of Mystara series. In this video, we cover the period from BC 799 to BC 744. Sometime between BC 800 and BC 700, as the Canolbarth forest grew, elven adventurers raided the woods of the surrounding lands, persuading forest animals to migrate to the Canolbarth. The necromancer, Prince Hashabermanal of Nithia, was convinced outside forces were working to destroy Nithia. He led an expedition of 17 followers westwards, but was caught in the backlash of the weather-changing spells cast by the elves and trapped near Shadowtree. Hashabermanal barely managed to preserve his existence as a lich, but was trapped by the powerful magic in suspended animation. Under pressure from Simbasta, Pardasta, and Masongo tribes, the Karakasta-Rakasta allied with the expanding Mylenian Empire, sometime between BC 800 and BC 600. The Karakasta learnt to use the bow under Mylenian guidance. By allying with the human enemies and using cowardly missile weapons, the Karakasta were viewed as pariahs by their fellow Rakasta. Guided by the gold dragon Aurum in human warrior form, the Eastwinders found the village of Darakin, sometime between BC 800 and AC 21. Later, the settlement was attacked by an army of undead from Malfegi Swamp, led by a lich. Aurum was nowhere to be found, but the villages spotted a gold dragon attacking and driving off the undead. Aurum and the lich perished in the final battle when the lich snapped an artifact that she thought was a staff of wizardry. Aurum carried twin spears and the Eastwinders adopted this as their symbol in his honor. Aurum and the lich perished in the final battle when the lich snapped an artifact that she thought was a staff of wizardry. The explosion lit up the sky and was seen from Darakin. They saw a new constellation in the sky, which they called Aurum. When the Eastwinders searched the remnants of the Malfegi Swamp battle, all they found was Aurum's twin spears on a pile of defeated undead. The Eastwinders adopted the twin spears as their symbol in Aurum's honor. Sometime between BC 800 and AC 415, some Mylenians reached the Vulture Peninsula and created the realm of Varelia. In AC 795, after their leaders were slain, the Red Orcs fled east and north, driven away by Sindhi and children of Atruagin attacks. Chief Atruagin parleyed with the Sindhi Himaria leaders, and they set their state borders. With the assistance of Otzi Titel and Kalaktatla, Atruagin raised a mighty plateau southwest of Lake Amsarak, to defend the children of Atruagin from invasion, and as a reminder of their former plateau, which was shattered in BC 1750. The new plateau was made twice as high, and 3 times as wide as the original one. The Bear Clan, led by Chief Hertani Stoneclaw, decided to make their new homes on the rock ledges of the northeastern cliffs of the new plateau, as their former lands had been destroyed. In recognition of his struggle against entropy for over 7 centuries, Atruagin became immortal in the sphere of matter, completing the path of the polymath, sponsored by Kalaktatla. The formation of the plateau adversely affected Sin's weather. Winds shifted, and rainfall changed drastically. Over the next century winters became drier, and summer rains became monsoonal. Desertification of the interior grasslands began. Sometime between BC 795 and BC 95, Ar completed the transformation of his kingdom in northern Alphatia with a series of floating islands. The kingdom was named Floating Ar. Ar attained immortality on the path of the Paragon, probably sponsored by Ixion or Razud, and became known as Palatarkan. It is not public knowledge that Palatarkan was Ar. He became patron of wizards seeking knowledge about the multiverse, especially Alphatian wizards. On the 12th of Fairmont BC 792, a shadow elf expedition from the City of Stars reached the inhospitable Sun's Anvil in the Broken Lands. They reported back to the City of Stars that the surface world was still inhospitable and probably would remain so forever. At this point, the shadow elves abandoned hope of returning to the surface world. Also in BC 792, Atsantayotl begins to corrupt Darnell Tigerstripes, chief of the Tiger clan. Over many months Atsantayotl's minions convinced Darnell that Atruagin abandoned his people when the orcs enslaved them. Darnell started converting his people to follow Atsantayotl. Atruagin finally realized what was happening and sent Hertani Bearclaw, chief of the Bear Clan, to stop Darnell from turning to Atsantayotl. Hertani was too late. Darnell and his Tiger clan had begun to worship Atsantayotl. Hertani and his guard were sentenced to death. Hertani requested a duel, Eshishi, but eventually lost and was sentenced to death. He and his guard were released, but were murdered en route by Darnell, but not before Hertani succeeded in attaining immortality. Hertani became immortal in the sphere of matter, on the path of the polymath, sponsored by Atruagin. Darnell threw Hertani's corpse into a piranha pool. In BC 784, Orc King Thrail died of disease. The orcs began fighting over the succession as Thrail lay on his deathbed. Thrail's son Merok was one of the first slain. Eventually the ruthless old orcish general Gokar prevailed and took the throne. From BC 784 to BC 771, Gokar's reign featured torture and wanton slaying. The Hin suffered terribly under his cruel rule. The orcs admired his temper and jovial spirit, quickly forgetting his bloody succession. Gladiatorial fights in his throne room pit provided entertainment for his followers as they feasted on Hin meat. Sometime between BC 782 and BC 720, Darnell Tigerstripes achieved immortality in the sphere of entropy, sponsored by Atsantayotl. Sometime between BC 780 and BC 750, Amani Turtle Rider achieved immortality in the sphere of thought on the path of the epic hero, possibly sponsored by Dialana or Freya. In BC 771, King Gokar died, murdered by his nominated successor, Ferg or, ironically with one of the many poisons he had supplied to him. Most of the court were poisoned as well. Ferg quickly crowned himself king before any succession war could start. During the reign of King Ferg or between BC 770 and BC 748, Hin were treated better to reduce the cost of losing Hin labor to death, as the king despised wastage. As a result, the Hin's strength recovered and a resistance movement developed. Wild Hin, being those hiding deep in the woods, free from orc rule, were warned when orcs planned Hin hunts in their areas. Many Hin babies were spirited away at birth to be raised by wild Hin instead of being slain by orcs as a feast delicacy. Hin began to plan for a day when they would rise again. Sometime between BC 760 and BC 736, Crown Prince Numina was born in the Nithian Empire. In BC 747, King Ferg was slain by the arrows of a rival, whilst riding along a forest road. The orc strife began, as the orcs battled each other over the succession, killing many and burning down their strongholds. Hin elders urged their people to flee to the deep woods to keep out of the orcs' way as they weakened themselves. Some Hin rose up and slew orcs, but most obeyed the elders. The orc strife continued over the mild winter of BC 747-746, and the summer of BC 746. Bridges were burned, as orc bands looted indiscriminately throughout the land, even digging up orc graves for plunder. The orcs set fire to the woods and destroyed clanholds, forcing many Hin to flee to the mines. The Hin went deeper underground in the mines. Eventually they broke into tunnels older than their own. On the shore of an underground lake, the young maiden, Aera Caspladorn, discovered Blackflame. Hin withdrew to the southwestern end of the land in sufficient numbers to defend a few farms. There, they quietly set about feeding the Hin hiding in the mountains as orcs went on wildly killing each other across the kingdom. The Hin clanmasters spent the fall of BC 746 debating when to act against the orcs. The onset of a harsh winter with numerous storms decided the matter for them. The orcs vastly scaled back their feuds to survive the winter. In the spring of BC 745, hungry Hin came down from the mountains and found no orcs in the southwestern farms. They decided to work the fields and build up food stores, instead of immediately battling the orcs. The orcs were busy replenishing their food supplies until late summer BC 745. Once properly fed, they resumed their orc strife battles. The winter of BC 745-744 was mild, so the orcs kept fighting each other. By this time, Hin food stores were well stocked, so they decided to emerge from the mountains and stage their third rising against orcish rule. Hin warbands picked off lone orcs, or small orc bands during the night. By the summer of BC 744, only a few hundred orcish warriors remained. But on the verge of victory, the Hin faced invading human raiders along the coast, intent on plundering the weakened realm. Gnolls and some dwarfs also raided from the north. Monsters roamed the woodlands. These raids commenced a period of years of lawless times. This concludes Part 18 of the Lore of Mystara series.